Until dawn. The last train story. There are moments, ones that seem insignificant, yet they can change a lifetime. As the train doors slid shut, Adrian made one last desperate move to jump in. But it was too late. The last train vanished before his eyes, leaving him standing on the cold, empty marble of the station. Midnight had already passed. A little further away, someone else was there. Luca. Leaning against the wall, sitting alone in the dimly lit platform, the only sign of movement was the red glow of his cigarette. As if being stranded here was nothing new to him. "Missed the train, huh?" Luca asked without even looking up. Adrian sighed. "Isn't it obvious?" Luca smirked, pulling his knees up into a more comfortable position. "Well, welcome then. This is the world of those who wait until dawn." Until dawn. Maybe what should have been the most ordinary night of their lives would turn out to be something much more. Adrian shoved his hands into his pockets and took a deep breath. The station was cold, but the emptiness of the night was even more unsettling. "So, what now? Are you just gonna sit here until morning?" Luca shrugged. "Not many options. At least this place keeps the rain off." Adrian frowned. "You're not going anywhere?" This time, Luca looked at him, his eyes dark, but with a faint spark hidden inside. "Maybe I don't have anywhere to go." Silence settled between them. Adrian tilted his head slightly, studying Luca's face. Even in the darkness, he could make out his sharp features. The slumped shoulders, the slightly messy hair, the gaze that seemed careless but carried a story within it. "I don't really have anywhere to go either," Adrian admitted, surprising even himself. Luca let out a quiet laugh. "Guess that's why you missed your train." Adrian smiled, but something inside him was uneasy. Maybe Luca was right. Maybe he wasn't even sure if he wanted to get anywhere. Maybe that's why he had been late. Maybe that's why he was still standing here. "So?" Luca asked, taking another drag from his cigarette. "Are you just going to wait here, or are you up for an adventure?" Adrian raised an eyebrow. "An adventure?" Luca rolled his eyes. "Come with me." Adrian hesitated. Wandering the streets of an unfamiliar city with a stranger in the middle of the night wasn't exactly a wise choice. But deep inside, there was a feeling that drowned out all reason. Maybe sometimes, the only way to find something was to get lost first. And so, Adrian stepped into the darkness, following Luca. As Adrian stepped away from the silence of the station and into the city's nocturnal hum, the unease in his chest slowly gave way to curiosity. A fine drizzle was falling, leaving shimmering traces under the pale glow of the streetlights. "Where are you taking me?" he asked, trying to match Luca's unhurried pace. Luca smiled without turning his head. "If I knew, it wouldn't be a surprise." Adrian rolled his eyes, but deep down, there was an odd sense of comfort in the uncertainty. Maybe he liked it. The city had never looked this way to him before. There was always a destination, a plan, a purpose. But with Luca, the night was simply the night, and that was enough. A few streets later, Luca slipped into an alley and stopped in front of an old building. He pushed the door open and shot Adrian a knowing glance. "Come on in, stranger." The wooden floor creaked beneath Adrian's step. The place looked abandoned, yet there was a strange warmth inside. Graffiti covered the walls, a dusty piano sat in the corner, and blankets were scattered on the floor, like someone had turned this into a hidden sanctuary. "What is this place?" Adrian whispered. Luca leaned against the wall, closing his eyes with a faint smile. "It's the kind of place that belongs to no one, but is sometimes exactly what someone needs." Adrian paused, letting the words settle in his mind. Then he smiled. "I think I get it." Luca sat down on the floor, pulling out a crumpled cigarette pack from his pocket. "So, Adrian, did you really miss your train, or are you running from something?" Adrian exhaled, the weight of the night making everything feel more exposed. "Maybe both," he admitted. Luca nodded. I figured. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but the kind that existed between two people who had stopped talking yet no longer needed words. Adrian studied Luca's face. In his eyes, there was an understanding that made him feel both seen and strangely at ease. Like Luca had already figured out something Adrian himself hadn't. What will you do when morning comes? Adrian asked. Luca smiled, but he didn't answer right away. Maybe I'll catch a train, he said eventually. Maybe I won't. Adrian nodded. Maybe I won't either. Luca looked at him. Or, he continued, his voice softer this time, maybe we just stay here for now. Adrian took a deep breath. Until now, he had been moving without thinking. But now, maybe Luca was right. Maybe some journeys begin by going nowhere at all. And so, until the morning came, two strangers disappeared into their own quiet world, lost somewhere beyond the city's noise. Luca's voice dropped, barely more than a whisper. Doesn't it feel strange to you, being here? Adrian didn't look away. Strange? Luca smiled faintly. We barely know each other, yet it feels like we've known each other for a long time. Adrian realized he was right. They were strangers, and yet it didn't feel that way. In this moment, everything felt too natural, too easy. Luca put out his cigarette and let it rest on the floor. Then, without any rush, he placed his hand near Adrian's. He didn't touch him, but the few centimeters between them might as well have been direct contact. Adrian held his breath. That tiny distance made the silence even heavier. Luca's gaze was steady. You don't want to leave, do you? Adrian slowly shook his head. No. Luca tilted his head slightly, smiling. Then stay. And for the first time in a long while, Adrian moved without thinking. His fingers closed over Luca's hand, hesitant but irreversible. As Luca's breath mingled softly with his lips, all the silence in the room collapsed into a single moment. The last train was long gone. But tonight, Adrian realized he didn't want to go anywhere at all. And in that moment, everything fell into place just as it was meant to. Sometimes the right moment is the most unplanned one. Sometimes a stranger becomes the one who feels most familiar. What about you? Have you ever chosen not to go where you were supposed to and just trusted your feelings instead? If you had, would you have stayed? Leave a comment, because maybe the best stories only gain meaning when we share them.